Hi there. I said that I would just put up some details about um, travelling with your animals to Europe from Britain, just because it's something that we've just done. We came back from France on Saturday. So, yeah, it's something that we've just had direct experience of, and something that I have to say I was a bit nervous of doing to begin with, a bit anxious about all the paperwork, all the time frames, and so on. So I just thought, because we've just done it, and we had a few hiccups, although it all worked out fine in the end, I just thought I'd share with you. Especially if it's something that you've never done before. I know lots of people do travel with their animals quite regularly, um, but obviously for the first time traveller, it is a bit daunting, and it's something that I think I would have liked a bit more information on before I'd embarked on it, if that had been available. So yeah, so I'm just making this little YouTube film. There will be details below if you want links to anything that I've talked about. Um, so initially, we needed to make sure that our dogs had their rabies jabs, and those have to be done at least 21 days before they have their animal health certificate completed. And the animal health certificate has to be completed at least one day. Oh, no, sorry. The animal health certificate has to be completed 10 days or less before you travel. But it's worth saying that the animal health certificate has to be done by a government approved vet. So your vet may not fall into that category, in which case you will need to find another one to do the form. And also to say that when we got to the border in the UK, friends of ours had had their dog's animal health certificate done on day 10 before departure, and the official at the UK border just flagged up the point that had our travel been postponed for any reason, even by 24 hours, that would mean that the dog's certification was therefore null and void, and they would have had to have it redone. So we had our dog's documentation done on day 9, but I would even urge you to maybe go to day 8 as a maximum, just because it gives you flexibility if for some reason you're held up during the travel. Anyway, back to the rabies jab. So the rabies jab has to be done at least 21 days before the animal health certificate. So we just chose to have our dogs done about 3 months before we left the UK, just because we just felt that that was it. Then we didn't have to worry about exact time frames. So you have your rabies jabs done, and then you book your dogs in for the animal health certificate. The animal health certificate takes the vet about 3/4 of an hour to complete, and irrespective of how many dogs you've got, you can have one certificate that covers all of them, but you will be charged per dog. So the rabies jabs cost us about £60, I think, each. And then the animal health certificate was about £120 per dog. So that is, as I say, we got one form, but had to pay for 2 dogs on that form. And that really is quite a detailed form. I'll show it to you now. So it's got about 14 or 15 pages. As you can see, it's stamped to high heaven. It has to be stamped on every single side of every single bit of paper, and all over the edges and everything. So yeah, it's really, really detailed. And at the back, there is the details of the rabies jabs as well, but we did take the original for that too. So if I mean, all their jabs and everything are on a card, and I just took it with me because I just thought it was safer than not having it if I was asked for it. But we didn't have to show any other documentation at all at the UK border. So We chose to travel on the Eurotunnel for a couple of reasons. One is that you can remain with your dog for the entire journey in Eurotunnel, and the other reason is we have one of our dogs is a rescue and was transported across Europe during the rescue, and I was concerned because I didn't know how the dog would relate to being transported again. So I wanted to make sure that I was with him. But you can obviously use ferries too. And if anyone who's listening to this has any relevant information about ferry journeys, then, please do put them in the comments below. My only information about ferries is what I've read, which is that you have to leave your dog either in the car during the entire journey, or on some ferries, not all ferries, but on some ferries they do have kennel facilities, and you can take your dog and kennel them on the boat. There is a place for exercising them, but apart from that, they have to remain in the kennel, and they must be muzzled from the car to the kennel, and when they're being exercised as well. So it's worth thinking about. But I have no direct experience of that. So, if somebody else does, please, put the information in the comments. It'd be interesting to hear your experiences. So when you go to the Eurotunnel, you drive down to the entrance, and there is a pet reception, and you go directly to pet reception. You take all your documentation and your dog into the pet reception. Usually there's loads of other animals in there as well. And they will ask you to scan your dog for its microchip to prove that the information on the form applies to your dog and it's not some random dog. And then it's pretty straightforward, to be honest. They'll give you all the documentation back, and you just go and get in the car and drive down onto the train. Once you're in the train, you can have all the windows open if you want to, and it's a pretty relaxed half an hour journey through the tunnel. I was quite surprised, actually. Our rescue dog was absolutely fine. But our dog, who we've had from a puppy, did find the tunnel quite stressful. She was panting all the way through the tunnel. As soon as we drove off the train at the other end, she was absolutely fine again. So she obviously didn't really enjoy it, but it is only half an hour. And had she been stressed like that on a boat, she would have been in that position for a lot longer. So, it's something to bear in mind. So once you're in Europe, you don't need to do anything else until 5 days before you leave to come back to the UK. So 5 days before, or more than 24 hours before. So you've got that sort of window of between 24 hours before you leave the Europe and up to 5 days before you leave Europe. You need to go to a vet in the country where you are. We were in France, and get them to administer a tapeworm drug. And then you also need to take your animal health certificate, and the vet must fill in the details of the drug that they've administered to the dogs on page 4. We didn't realise that they absolutely had to fill in page 4, so we got them to, they gave us a certificate, and we asked them about it, and did they need to fill in page 4, and they said, oh, no, that's fine, the certificate covers it. You can just take the certificate with you when you get to Eurotunnel. But actually, we were very fortunate because we haven't travelled before with the dogs, that they'd still let us through with the certificate, because they did say that normally they wouldn't allow a certificate. Normally it has to be filled in on page 4 of the animal health certificate. So that's a really important thing to note if you have a vet, particularly, I think, because we were really in a very rural area in the middle of Brittany. We weren't near the port, so we didn't get a vet near the port to do it. So it may be that in big cities or towns near to the ports, they're more used to filling in the documentation, but clearly this vet considered the certificate to be enough, and it turned out that it wasn't. But yeah, we were fortunate. The people at Pet Reception in Calais were really good, and they said, look, we can evidence the fact that you've never travelled with your dogs before, so we know that this is something you didn't know. And because the documentation has all the correct details on it, even though it isn't in the correct form, for this particular transportation we will let you through. So they were very clear that if it ever happened again, we'd have to do the whole thing over again, the tapeworm thing. So we were very aware that we could have been ended up staying in Calais for an extra night or two, finding a vet there and having to get them to certify on the animal health certificate. So yeah, do bear that in mind at the when you do the tapeworm drug just before you come back to the UK. Apart from that, I would say it was really easy. It was really easy. And as long as you follow all the advice, and there's quite a bit of advice on the government website about travelling with animals to Europe. As long as you just make sure that you follow all that advice and get the right documents, you won't have any problems at all travelling with them. It's really simple. Also, just to say, if you've never travelled on the autoroutes in France before, there are loads and loads of really nice stopping areas. Normally there's little signs that say that there's a picnic area, and there'll be trees and shade for the dogs, and as long as you take plenty of water, you'll always be able to exercise them every few hours as you're travelling. And the other thing to note, which I was quite surprised about, was how much dog mess there is in France. A lot more than I'm used to in the UK. We still picked up all our dog mess from our dogs, but clearly I don't know whether it was the region we went to or whether it's just cultural, but there definitely was a lot of dog mess about. So yeah, just worth mentioning that really. Otherwise, have a fantastic time. It's lovely to take your dogs on holiday with you, even though it probably costs about the same. I think we worked out between the two dogs, it was just under £500 for the two of them to go with us for 2 weeks to France. But to be honest, if you kennelled them or you had someone come home sit or they went to a home environment to be cared for while you're away, you're going to pay. So, it's not really about the money, it's about the experience. And I think we all had such a lovely holiday and it was great to be able to share it with the dogs. So if you want to take your dogs to Europe, don't be afraid of it. Just make sure you get all the paperwork done in the correct order and have a really fantastic holiday.